Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Now that we have all cameras whirring, all people with coffee in their hands. My name's John Balbus. I'm the Senior Advisor for Public Health at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, and on behalf of NIEHS, I really want to welcome everybody here in the room and those of you who are watching us on the web. I wanted to start by conveying the regrets of my boss, Dr. Linda Birnbaum, the Director of NIEHS and ATP, who would very much have wanted to be here but could not be here, so she sends her greetings to everybody and is very interested and supportive of this workshop. I wouldn't be surprised if she's tuning in somewhere on the web. But let me welcome you to this 12th workshop now, at least by my count on the website, of the Standing Committee on Emerging Science for Environmental Health Decisions. The topic we have today is really a great example of what I think is the best work of this committee, which is taking a look at an emerging science on a biological phenomena, explaining that, raising awareness of that emerging science, and then figuring out what are the environmental implications and how do we get a better grip on the interaction between that biological phenomena and environmental exposures. And this is a particularly timely topic. Just last month, the Encyclopedia on DNA Elements, the ENCODE project, put out 30 papers on what used to be called the non-coding parts of our DNA. It used to be called the junk DNA. They found biological functions for 80% of our DNA. And you know that a project is big stuff when it has its own iPad app. So I don't know how many of you have your iPads here, but you can download the ENCODE app and really understand it. There's a lot of controversy around this. I think there's a lot of understanding to be gained about the interaction between all that and the environment. This committee has been spending a lot of time looking at non-mutational variations in DNA, a lot of time on epigenetics. But today we're going to focus on three things we haven't been focusing on, which is telomeres, copy number variation, and mobile elements. This is a topic of deep interest to NIEHS. It's something that we have been working on from an epidemiological standpoint, from a basic science standpoint, as we'll see during the next day and a half. And it's building on a workshop that we sponsored last October in partnership with the Environmental Mutagen Society and the International Congress of Human Genetics in Montreal, Canada. That was focused on copy number variation, so we're obviously going to be building on that, plus even more, and we'll be hearing more about this workshop later on from Tom Glover. So very excited for this workshop today. In closing, I want to just thank the Workshop Planning Committee, which was chaired by Dr. Cheryl Walker, who we'll be hearing from next. They've done a great job, great energy and effort to create a very good agenda for this meeting. And also the Standing Committee as a whole, which oversees the workshops, chaired by Dr. Bill Farland. And then lastly, I want to acknowledge the staff who really put the work in the workshop and who make this all possible, make this come off so well. And that's the director, Marilee Shelton Davenport, Keegan Sawyer, and Aisha Ahmed, who are all here today and making this work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Walker and look forward to the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to all of you who are both here in the room and those of you that are joining us by the web. You'll be interested to know that actually the web impact of these meetings continues to grow and is actually becoming quite substantial, and I think is a harbinger of where we're going scientifically as a community. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize that John was referring to is how timely this particular workshop is. I suspect that if you went online and tried to find another workshop that was focused on genomic plasticity and environmental impact in this way, those of you who are on your computers might want to Google that right now. I'm not sure there would be another hit. And this is really a cutting-edge exploration of something that we now know is going to build in importance and, in fact, probably be something that 10 years from now, that same Google search will probably pull up, I don't know, a dozen or so a year. Why is that? Well, we may have thought of the genome as being static. It's the DNA that we inherit from mom and dad, and there you are. But what has started to evolve over time is that this is not, in fact, a static entity. It is plastic, and it is in fact intentionally plastic. And so you're going to hear today from literally the world's experts in the mechanisms and the type of plasticity that we now know are intrinsic to our genome. And so since this plasticity is built in, it means that we have to guard it carefully, and it means that we have to look at how the environment is going to influence this plasticity. And in terms of adverse health outcomes, it is clearly a target for environmental stressors that can impact human health and wellness. So this particular workshop, as John said, is building on previous workshops on epigenetics. Of course, those are the modifications of the genome that affect largely gene transcription, but also chromatin structure, and in fact can contribute to some of the plasticity that we're going to hear about today. And I've been asked to tell those of you who are interested, there's a newsletter on the table that will give you a little more information about that. So we're going to be looking beyond mutation, and we're going to be talking about what are some of the fundamental genomic alterations that can result from this plasticity that we're going to hear about, and how they contribute to disease, aging, health, and wellness. We're going to hear about some exciting new technologies and tools because, as you can imagine, for an emerging area, some of the tools that we had in our kit in the past will not be sufficient for the questions we want to ask today. And so we're going to hear about some of those new ones. And in particular, and I just want to share with you in the group, this was perhaps the largest challenge for the committee. We want to think about how the environment is going to be influencing these mechanisms. This is the really cutting edge part of the really cutting edge work you're going to hear about today, because while we're beginning to explore mechanisms, we know almost nothing. I will not say nothing, but we know very little about how the environmental factors that we all think about on a daily basis are interacting and intersecting with these mechanisms. And so probably there will be some really good opportunities in the discussion period for those of you who are more familiar with the environmental side of the research continuum to ask questions and to make suggestions to the incredible cutting-edge scientists we have here who are working on mechanisms. And perhaps there'll be some new intersections that will come up as part of this meeting, which, of course, Marilee Shelton and her staff will capture for us. Okay, here's the planning group. I'd like to acknowledge the chair of the standing committee, which is Bill Farland, Steve Rappaport, Daniel Shaughnessy, Thea Tilsty, and myself. Multiple meetings, multiple discussions, actually very exciting discussions about what this meeting should look like. And even though there were a couple of plasticity mechanisms that were in fact left off the table primarily for the sake of time, the ones that we decided to focus on were telomeres, copy number variation and chromothripsis, and jumping genes. And so we'll be talking about today how these processes are linked to various diseases where they are known to be linked, and where we have the information, and again, this is really an emerging area, how environmental influences may be targeting these processes. What do we know? What is the significance now? And what is the potential significance? This is probably a great line for us to keep in our mind when we're listening to these speakers, when we're hearing what do we know, what does it mean? And then in particular for this community who's involved in this workshop, what is the potential significance? We will have a wrap-up discussion at the end in terms of research needs. What are the big questions? What are the tools that we yet still need to answer the big questions in the area? I also just want to acknowledge the other members of the Standing Committee who have been very supportive and contributory to the building of this workshop. They are listed here for you on the screen. And this has, in fact, truly been a group effort, and so I do want to acknowledge their participation in the workshop. So, a couple of housekeeping reminders. One, we are webcasting. And comments and questions from the web are possible. I guess they've been given the instructions for how to do that. Oh, well, there is a button. So we've made it super easy. There's a button. You have a comment, you have a question, we'd love to hear from you. Marilee and her staff will be capturing those and presenting them throughout the meeting. We will be archiving the slides and the webcast. There will be a newsletter that will have the highlights from this meeting. And so, by the way, those of you who got particularly excited about something or thought there was something that was particularly impactful for what you're doing, mention that to Marilee or one of the staff members, and they could capture that as a highlight for others as well who may have either missed that point or may have said, oh, yeah, really, I agree with that. We do not make recommendations. This is the disclaimer. The standing committees do not make recommendations or develop consensus conclusions. Our purpose is to foster the exchange of ideas.